Well, when I opened up social media and I was greeted with this piece of information, it made me incredibly sad. And then I decided, you know what? I want to do a deep dive. Is this truly a financial failure? Has this series failed to such a degree that we may never see a season 2 or even a season 3? Is this the end of Heavenly Delusion? There's a lot of things that can be said, and a lot of guesses and just up in the air at the moment, but I want to talk about it because the number here, it says that only 645 copies were sold in its first week. Very low. And to put this in perspective, when we compare it to something like, let's say, Chainsaw Man, it was also very low, but later on, it was revealed by the CEO of MAPPA that it was a financial success, but its amount of Blu-ray DVDs were very low. He went on record to admit this. So, basically, Heavenly Delusion obviously had a very poor reception. The question is why? When you look at it, it's a very beautiful series. Art animation's great. Voice acting was incredible. It was unique to a degree. Story was awesome. And I feel like, people that did watch it really did love watching it. Hell, I loved it. It was great. And it's just like, why did it perform bad? And we gotta look at all these factors, okay? Box 1 was listed at 19,800 yen. To convert this into USD, it is $134. Now, I don't know if this price is calculating tax or not. I don't know exactly how the tax system works in Japan. I have no idea. So we're just going to go like this. Just $134, okay? Basically, $134 for a BD Box 1. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people are probably saying, wow, that's hella expensive for a BD box because, that's just $134. I mean, let's be honest, the economy isn't doing probably the best right now for a lot of people. I mean, prices are just skyrocketing everywhere, so $134, that's kind of a lot of money to ask to throw out for a BD. But let's talk about something that many of you might be unaware of. Most of the time when BDs are released in Japan, they don't release like 12 episodes with it. They don't release 24 episodes with it. Because I know most people that probably go to their local store or whatever, if they do pick up a physical copy of a BD DVD, they see like, let's say season 1 or season 2 packaged on it and they buy it. And that usually contains maybe 12 or 24 episodes. And it's around $40 to $50. But with Japan, when they do a BD DVD release, they do like a volume 1 box, it usually only has like 3 to 4 episodes in it. Because when I have bought, stuff from overseas, like I bought from Japan and shipped it over here, besides obviously just the extraordinary money it takes just for shipping, if we're just calculating the price of the BD DVD, you're only getting 3 to 4 episodes on that box. And then you got to spend the exact same price again for the next 3 to 4 episodes. So you factor all this in for, an anime, you're averaging about maybe $500 per series just for like a 12 episode show. That's a lot of money, like legit. And so, obviously, fans do have to be a little bit picky with what they want to buy, especially when money is probably tight for a lot of people in this day and age right now. And when you factor in just this right here, it's like that could be the reason. But I also think that, there's other factors at play here. I think maybe it was poor advertisement, maybe, just people weren't as interested in it, because maybe it didn't follow the certain cliches and niches that people wanted. There's a lot of factors into this, maybe just bad timing. Stuff like this sometimes happens with no reason whatsoever, but we do need to talk about just how bad of a failure this is. And that is the fact that it is very similar to the sales numbers of Roku no Yusha. And if you don't know the history of Roku no Yusha, I will enlighten you. And if you do recognize this, I'm about to reawaken some long-forgotten PTSD. Because when I saw those sales numbers, I had to go back and look at these sales numbers just to put into a comparison that Heavenly Delusion is literally close to the BD sales of this. This was back in 2015. A long time ago at this point in time. Almost a decade ago. And this series, Roku no Yusha, was very popular in the West. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people talked about it. It was a very popular show. I reviewed every single episode of the show. It was a fun, mysterious show. But its BD sales underperformed by a large margin, as you could see here. And then, after this information came out, it was revealed by the retailer that was supposed to bring the series to the West They straight up canceled the standard edition and DVD releases of Blu-ray DVD because there was just no point. It underperformed so bad, they would just be losing money trying to bring this to the West, which I think is kind of wrong. I feel like a lot of people would have bought it because the West liked it, but it was just straight up canceled, which just went to show the financial burden that the series was. It bombed so hard that it just didn't even get a proper release after it was finished. Then we fast forward to Chainsaw Man. It's very clear it underperformed with its disc sales. I mean, the CEO of MAPPA literally stated himself, he said it was a financial success, but he did admit that he was unsatisfied with the amount of Blu-ray DVD sales, and that, Jujutsu Kaisen that he worked on recently had a larger impact than Chainsaw Man, when it's very clear they put a lot more money into Chainsaw Man. So it's just like everything about it, Chainsaw Man even underperformed. And so this is probably, there's a lot of things at play here. Maybe because discs are just too expensive, maybe people just rather stream it and download it. There's a lot of things to look at here, and so let's get into that, because there is a counter to this. We also have to talk about Bocchi. Bocchi the Rock came out of nowhere, let's be honest. A lot of people were completely unaware of the show. It came out, blew everybody away, and it sold 18,000 BDs and 1,800 DVDs in its first week. And when you put that side by side, Chainsaw Man, that's wild. But we do need to talk about the other thing to Chainsaw Man for its defense. That there was people that pointed out that, the information with the sales were only from certain sites and not actually MAPPA's official sales numbers. So, for all we know, there could have been maybe 12,000, 14,000 BD DVD sales. Just we're unaware of that actual statistic. But the only thing we have to go on is that, the CEO admitted that it did underperform with its sales. So, if we're factoring it around the time period, most likely he was comparing it with Bocchi the Rock, and Bocchi probably outperformed it by maybe a large margin, a small margin, who knows. But Bocchi clearly swept, which kind of gets away with the notion that people, don't want to buy DVD BDs anymore, at least in Japan. Clearly they do, to go out of the way and buy this series. So what's going on with Heavenly Delusion? What's going on with Chainsaw Man? And I guess let's talk about Roku no Yusha. Let's talk about this. What's happening here? Well, if we look at Chainsaw Man kind of speaks for itself. It is very, very hated in Japan because of the director and certain things. I've made multiple videos on this. You can go back and watch those if you want. But it's not liked by Japan. Japan does not like the anime whatsoever. They love the manga. They hate the anime. Absolutely hate it. Watch some of the streams that Map has done and talks about Chainsaw Man. You can see the audience, they do not like Chainsaw Man. It's the truth. You just go look it up. And it's very clear the West loves Chainsaw Man. But at the end of the day, a lot of Japanese CEOs and companies in Japan, they care more about the audience within their home country than people in the West. That's a good and a bad thing. It's a double-edged sword because, for one, it obviously means that they won't conform to changes of tropes and stuff from different countries, but on the other hand, it causes series that are really unique and amazing to get completely canceled because, Japan doesn't like it. I mean, a good example of this is like stuff in Weekly Shonen Jump. There's obviously a lot more variables there, but there is a lot of manga over the years that have come out in Weekly Shonen Jump that the West really loves, but Japan doesn't care for, and because they care more about their ratings, their weekly ratings for their magazine in Japan, those series just get the axe. They don't care. They don't care about what other people think. So, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. And so, when you think about all this, all these sales just stem from Japan, okay? And they're not factoring anything that's from the West ordering anything or whatever. They're not factoring any of those sales. So, that's one thing I do want to point out. So, once again, what's going on here? Why are these sales so low? Well, we got to think about Chainsaw Man. We know now Japan doesn't like it. Okay, so let's move over into, Roku no Yusha. Roku no Yusha came out in a time period with a lot of good anime. If I recall, it was around, the same era when Overlord was really at its peak. ReZero was really coming out as well. There was a lot of good stuff around this time period. People were getting excited. There was probably a lot to buy. And Roku just fell through the gap. It slid under the radar, and probably people in Japan didn't care too much about it because there's just so much going on at the time. It underperformed. And obviously we never got a season 2 because if we would, it would already been announced by now. And it's almost been a decade, so it's never going to happen. But we got to move over into Heavenly Delusion. Heavenly Delusion obviously has underperformed with its sales. This obviously doesn't factor in merchandise and all that type of stuff, but it did underperform, at least from the sales. Now, another thing we need to factor in is the time, the era we're currently in. Streaming. You go back almost a decade ago, 2014, 2013, yeah, Netflix and stuff was around, Crunchyroll's around, yeah, but let's be honest, it wasn't as, big. It wasn't a cultural phenomenon as it is today. Streaming services are everywhere. Every company needs to have its own streaming service. It's basically become cable at this point. I'm not going to get into that one too deep, but the point of the matter is that streaming is everywhere. Everybody knows about it, everybody talks about it, everybody watches streaming. And because of that, streaming is a large factor now of if a series is successful or not. And this is kind of something that's very in line with, like, the recent stuff with the One Piece live action. It's been doing very well, and I might make a separate video for that very soon. But the point is that at this time period when Roka no Yusha was coming out, streaming wasn't as popular and looked upon, probably from Japan, to look at the West. And so, doesn't matter, it bombed, it failed, and they threw it out. But we gotta think about people that probably watched this show in the West. That's probably a factor now. Streaming is a factor. So even if the sales did very bad, it's very likely that streaming is now a factor at play here. So there is a possibility of a season 2, or not, who knows, but I do think it will have an impact to a degree. But I think streaming is a big factor, which I think is one of the other reasons why Chainsaw Man was saved from a bad fate, is because of just how explosive it was in the West. It was undeniably popular. So, because of that, I think that plays a huge factor. But we also got to look at the marketing and figures. Who's going to buy a figure for Heavenly Delusion in comparison to something like Bocchi or Chainsaw Man? Like, let's be honest here, okay? Heavenly Delusion's a great series. But is there anything about it, truthfully, like figure-wise or merchandise you would want in comparison to something else? Not probably. There's probably a lot of people out there that just rather get something else. And so I don't think that the merchandise for this series as well is incredibly popular as something like, like I said, Chainsaw Man or Bocchi, Jujutsu Kaisen. So that also has a huge factor. So yeah, just to kind of get into the main point, it's sad news overall just to see, Heavenly Delusion have such low BD sales that it is literally on par with Roka no Yusha's sales. That's pretty scary to see. I hope this series has a future, but if there is one thing that this series has taught us, is that pretty art and animation doesn't always carry a show for its sales. Enough said there. So we'll leave it at that. I'll leave that little discussion piece there, and you guys can discuss it in the comments below. But be safe, stay healthy, Chibi out.